يموت فيها ولا يحيا. And within it, you do not die and you do not live. And then Allah speaks about those who meets Allah as a believer, and they have قَدْ عَمِلَ الصَّالِحَاتِ. They've done good deeds. They've done good deeds. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't say أَعْمَالَ الصَّالِحَاتِ, many good deeds. He doesn't say that. He says أَعْمَالُ الصَّالِحَاتِ in general. If you come to Allah as a believer and do good deeds just in general, this is what awaits them. فَأُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمُ الدَّرَجَاتُ الْعُلَى. For those people, they will have high ranks in Jannah. جَنَّاتُ عَدْنٍ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ. In these gardens, there will be rivers flowing underneath you. خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا. Forever you will dwell in it. وَذَلِكَ جَزَاءُ مَنْ تَزَكَّى. And this is the reward of those who seek purity. Those who seek, and we explain purity here is of the example of the magicians. And how did they seek purity? Is through asking Allah to forgive them. So for those who ask Allah to forgive you, and you do good deeds, and you are amongst the believers, you are of the people of Jannah. SubhanAllah. Now after this, we get into the events post duel, if you like. After what had happened between the magicians and Fir'aun and Musa alayhi salam and Harun, in Surah Taha, it jumps completely to a different scene, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وَلَقَدْ أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَى مُوسَىٰ أَنْ أَسْرِ بِعِبَادِي فَاضْرِبْ لَهُمْ طَرِيقًا فِي الْبَحْرِ وَلَقَدْ أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَى مُوسَىٰ أَنْ أَسْرِ بِعِبَادِي فَاضْرِبْ لَهُمْ طَرِيقًا فِي الْبَحْرِ يَبَسًا لَا تَخَافُ دَرَكًا وَلَا تَخْشَىٰ فأتبعهم فرعون بجنونه فغشيهم من اليم ما غشيهم وأضل فرعون قومه وما هدى يا بني إسرائيل قد أنجيناكم من عدوكم يا بني إسرائيل قد أنجيناكم من عدوكم وواعدناكم جانب الطور الأيمن عليكم المن والسلوى كلوا من طيبات ما رزقناكم ولا تطغوا فيه فيحل عليكم غضبي ومن يحلل عليه غضبي فقد هوى وإني لغفار لمن تاب وآمن وعمل صالحا ثم اهتدى. In ayah number 77, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَى مُوسَىٰ أَنْ أَسْرِ بِعِبَادِي اضْرِبْ لَهُمْ طَرِيقًا فِي الْبَحْرِ يَبَسًا لَا تَخَافُ دَرَكًا وَلَا تَخْشَىٰ. Allah jumps into the next scene, completely skipping a few things. When you're reading Surah Taha, you don't get this. You don't know if there's anything that happens in between. Now, if we speak about the revelations during this time, we mentioned that Surah Taha was one of the first revelations, one of the first surahs that was revealed. So, again, I'm going to spoil the story for you guys. Now, as being the people of the Ummah of the Prophet Muhammad, we already know the entirety of the story of Musa. So we have to, when we're kind of analyzing the surah, we have to think back on the chronological order in which Allah revealed the story. Allah speaks here specifically about when Musa alayhi salam is standing in front of the Bahr, the Red Sea, and they're stuck. At this point of time, you're not aware, or the Sahabas, and they're not aware of what had happened in between the battle and this ayah here. All of a sudden, Musa alayhi salam is in front of the sea with, I don't know, with Bani Israel. فَاضْرِبْ لَهُمْ طَرِيقًا فِي الْبَحْرِ. And Allah orders him to hit the Bahr with a stick, so that there's a dry path for them to walk on. لَا تَخَافُ دَرَكًا وَلَا تَخْشَى. And don't fear for being overtaken by something. We don't know what that is yet. And we'll eventually know. The next ayah is Fir'aun. Don't be fearful for being overtaken by Fir'aun and his army, and don't worry about it. I got you. When you are reading the story, you're unaware of what had happened in between. With the studies of the Quran, you'll know what had happened in between in other surahs. And that's one of the beauty of the story of Musa alayhi salam. It's like a puzzle piece. In fact, when you're being revealed, let's just say, you're in the shoes of the Sahabas. And during the time of the Sahabas, you don't know these details. All you know is from the battle to Musa alayhi salam is in front of the sea. When you read Surah Shura, Surah Al-A'raf, and other surahs that speaks about the story of Musa, imagine when it's being revealed. And the Sahabas are familiar with the story of Musa in Surah Taha. When this is being revealed again, the same exact story, you're being told new details about the same story. And you're like, wait, I know the story. I know this exact scene, but Allah is revealing new details. Now that I know even more, it gives you a different level of understanding. You start to understand the level of what Musa had to go through during this time. How much fear that he had to go through, because you don't know these details. You're revealed these details later on. And I want to highlight these things before we move on to the next ayah, right? So, in Sunan al-Nasa'i, in Hadith al-Futun, the Hadith of trials and tribulations. Now, this Hadith, the title of this Hadith is the title, Hadith of Trials and Tribulations. Now, this Hadith is specifically about the story of Musa. Why? Because the entirety of the story of Musa is all about trials and tribulations. That's his story. Musa alayhi salam, little did he had any chance to have any type of ease. His whole life. I mean, imagine dealing with a person like Fir'aun and people like the Israelites. When do you have time to breathe? When do you have to deal with these people? When do we have time to breathe when we deal with them? When do the people of Palestine have time to sleep when you deal with these type of people? Musa alayhi salam had to deal with them 24/7. So in this hadith, they title it Hadith al-Futun, the hadith of trials and tribulations. And it explains the entirety of the story of Musa alayhi salam. After what had happened between the magicians and what Fir'aun witnessed his own magicians and how they submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and accepted the religion of Musa alayhi salam and Harun, in this hadith, the scholars mention that Fir'aun became more aggressive. He became more upset on what had happened, the results of all the magicians accepting Islam. Obviously, like you think about nowadays, if the tyrants of the world, if the leaders of the world, they don't get what they want, they act like babies, so to speak. They throw tantrums and they start bombing places and they start punishing people. Fir'aun alayhi salam, he took this stance. The scholars said that he became more aggressive with his oppression upon Bani Israel. Now, if we go back and we take what Musa alayhi salam requested from Fir'aun, in ayah number 47, Musa alayhi salam says, فَأْتِيَاهُ فَقُولَا إِنَّا رَسُولَ رَبِّكَ فَأَرْسِلْ مَعَنَا بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ وَلَا تُعَذِّبُهُمْ قَدْ جِئْنَاكَ بِآيَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكَ وَالسَّلَامُ عَلَى مَنِ اتَّبَعَ الْهُدَى. So there's three things I want to focus on in this ayah. First, they came to Fir'aun with miracles, with signs from his Lord. That's number one. Number two is Musa alayhi salam requested by Allah, telling Musa alayhi salam to request to let go of Bani Israel, to let them free. Number three is وَلَا تُعَذِّبُهُمْ, and do not persecute them. Do not harm them in any way. So you look at Fir'aun and how he responded to this request. First of all, the first was that he was shown signs and miracles, so that لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَذَكَّرْ أَوْ يَخْشَى, so that he may accept it, he may turn back to Allah. He rejected it and he refused. Right? Number two, the request was to let Bani Israel go. He rejected it and he refused. Number three is وَلَا تُعَذِّبُهُمْ, do not harm them, do not punish them. And the scholars mention that he rejected and he refused that as well. Every single request he rejected and refused. كَذَّبَ وَتَوَلَّى. Now what did he do? He oppressed the Bani Israel even more so. And he actually harmed them in a bigger fashion. Like, if he were to, if we go back to the last lesson, if he had if he had the audacity to punish his wife the way he did, Asya, as we mentioned, he threw a big boulder and crushed her to his own wife. And he punished every single one of the magicians the way that he did, cutting his arm, cutting their arm off and their leg off, and staking them onto the palm trees of Egypt. If he's able to do that, how much more so would he punish the people that he enslaved, he looked down upon, he hated? What kind of punishment did they have to go through? You can just imagine. Now, this continued. And we mentioned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he didn't punish Fir'aun immediately. In fact, the scholars mention that there were other signs that he sent to Fir'aun as well. In Surah Al-A'raf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, وَلَقَدْ أَخَذْنَا آلَ فِرْعَوْنَ بِالسِّنِينَ وَالنَّقْصِ مِنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَذَكَّرُونَ. The other punishment or the other signs that Allah sent down was that He caused years of famine upon Fir'aun and his people. And He made them deficient in their fruits and their worldly remains, their sustenance. So perhaps they might remember Allah. That's first. Well, I don't know if it's in order, but that's from Surah Al-A'raf. In later on in that surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala recognizes a few more signs. He says, فَأَرْسَلْنَا عِلَيْهِمْ الطُّوفَانُ وَالْجَرَادُ وَالْقُمَلُ وَالضَّفَادِعُ وَالدَّمُ آيَاتٌ مُفَصَّلَاتٌ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala recognizes, He says, He sent them floods, He sent them locusts, He sent them lice, and He sent them frogs, and He sent them blood. Ayatun mufassalat, distinct signs from Allah. Now these signs, we might think, or some scientists might say, it's just a flood. It's just locusts. It's just lice. It's just frogs, and it's just blood. And till today, there are scientists who study these events, and they try to explain it. They try to explain it. You see Discovery Channel, you see many things where scientists try to explain what causes these floods, what causes so many locusts to come at one time, what causes this lice to come, and frogs, and what causes the Nahr al-Nil, the Nile River, to become blood. But when they explain, they can come up with so much that this limits their explanation. However, Allah says that these are distinct signs from Allah. What I want to highlight here is that, isn't it enough that Allah shown the miracle of the hand and the staff, the snake? Isn't that enough? It was enough for the magicians. Wouldn't it be enough for the Fir'aun? Yet, Allah chooses to wait and give him another chance. 5 more chances. A total of 9 chances, 9 opportunities, 9 signs from Allah. And Fir'aun didn't accept it. 9 signs. Yet, كَذَّبَ وَتَوَلَّى. He turned back and he turned away from it. The scholars actually mention that each time, one by one, the first of which is flood. And when after they suffered from the flood, they went to Musa. They went to Musa asking him, pleading to him, to beg Allah to stop the flood. And then Musa, he asked Allah to stop. And you know what they did? They just went back to normal. And then Allah sent the locusts. And then it was so disruptive to their life, they went to Musa again, asking him, pleading to beg Allah, making dua so that Allah can stop the locusts. And the same for the lice, the same for the frogs, and the same for the blood. Each and every time, they beg Musa to make dua to who? To Fir'aun? No. To Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when Allah removed that hardship, they went back. In fact, in the same ayah, when Allah recognized these 5 signs, at the end of the ayah, ayat mufassalat, Allah continued to say, فَاسْتَكْبَرُوا وَكَانُوا قَوْمًا مُجْرِمِينَ. They became arrogant. Even after these signs, they were arrogant. فَاسْتَكْبَرُوا. Every sign, so remember when we said fa in front of the word, it signifies that they became, whatever that word was, they became right afterwards. The moment Allah lifted the hardship, fa, istakbaru. Right after it was lifted, they became arrogant after. And arrogance here shows that they were like, oh, whatever. And they went back to how they were before. 5 times. 5 times. And they went back and just, oh, mujrim. These are the worst of people. Criminals. Now, mujrim, the word criminal here is that when you do something wrong, or you did a crime, the judge comes and say, you're the one that did it. You're guilty of doing that crime. Meaning, it's not only that you did the crime, but it's established that you've done it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using the word mujrim because these guys, they're guilty for what they've done. Is at a different level, if that makes sense. Now, I want to pause here because we as Muslims may think, as we're reading the surah, and we're reading, it's ridiculous that these people are shown so many signs day after day. In fact, Allah accepted their dua through Musa alayhi salam as a sense of like Allah exists. Allah is there lifting these hardships. I want to turn to us today. Every single one of us individually, and think about how many signs did Allah give us for us to remember Allah. In every single day, even though we make dua to Allah, how many times do we turn back and we sin against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We say that it's ridiculous for these people, Fir'aun and his people, to have a total of 9 signs, and they turn back to Allah. They turn away from Allah. What about us? To be honest with us, to be honest with you, Allah's shown us more signs than just 9. Every time a community member dies, that's a sign. Every time a calamity strikes our community or us individually, it's a sign. Every time Allah blesses us with work, with money, with wealth, with health, every time Allah gives you something, it's a sign from Allah. When Allah takes your health away from you, that's a sign. When Allah allows you to live during the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah and reminds you, just like the sheikhs mentioned right after prayer today, when he reminds you of Arafah tomorrow, and the brothers who didn't come for Maghrib to hear the sheikh, that's a sign for us here in this masjid. Allah chose you to remind you tomorrow to fast. It's a sign from Allah. Are we going to accept His invitation? Or are we going to be like these people who sees the sign of Allah, begs Allah to stop it, and then they go back to sinning? They go back to their regular day. May Allah allow us to witness Yawm al-Arafah. May Allah allow us to fast tomorrow. And may Allah allow us to be one of those who He forgives on the day of Arafah. Allahumma ameen. As we get to the next ayah, Musa alayhi salam, After the final sign, Allah tells him to leave. Now, this is a common theme with many of the prophets of the past. Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, the final time was when he finished the ark. And he tells Nuh, leave. Leave your people. He tells, I'm sorry. Lut alayhi salam, to leave his people before the punishment comes. And he told him not to look back. He tells the Prophet Mohamad and tells his people to make hijrah from the people of Quraysh, to leave his people. The only prophet that actually stayed with his people is our Prophet Muhammad. That's the only prophet. Everyone else, I take that back. I'm not sure. But it's a common theme with a lot of the prophets that before a punishment arises, before Allah sends his punishment, he tells his prophet and his people to leave. Musa alayhi salam, in the very next ayah, Allah says, وَلَقَدْ أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَى مُوسَى أَنْ أَسْرِ بِعِبَادِي. He tells Musa alayhi salam through wahi to leave. And so the word here is asri. The word asri, as we know in Surah Isra, is what? Surah Al-Isra is the night journey, is traveling at night time. The same word is used in this ayah. Asri, to leave, to take leave during the night, to travel during the night. In fact, it is mentioned by Mujahid that during this time when they left, it was an eclipse. You know, when the moon covers the sun, and there's a ring. That happened during this night in Al-Tabari. So he left in the middle of the night. According to some of the scholars, I believe in Al-Alusi and others, Ibn Abbas, they mentioned that to avoid suspicion, because if you have a lot of these, these people leaving at nighttime, the Egyptians and Fir'aun, they're like, what are they doing? Why are they leaving? So to avoid that, the scholars mention that the Jews, they announced that they have a festival coming up. They're going to celebrate it outside of the city. So on this night, they started telling people that there's going to be a festival that they're going to celebrate outside of Egypt. So when that night comes and people are leaving, they're like, oh, they're leaving to their festival. They're leaving to celebrate, so it's not suspicious for them to leave. The scholars also mention that the Bani Israel, the people of Israel, or Yaqub, they borrowed jewelry, they borrowed wealth from the Egyptians to show that we're going to borrow this, and when we leave, we still owe you, so we have to come back to pay you back. We're not going to just leave and we owe you, so we're going to come back. Those two reasons is to avoid suspicion for the people of Egypt, right? So when they left, they took these things, and these items, the things that they take, is going to show up later on, possibly in the next lesson, inshallah. There's also a narration that when Musa alayhi salam left with his people at night, Musa alayhi salam became lost. Musa alayhi salam became lost and his people came to him. The learned people, the knowledgeable people came to Musa and told Musa, the reason why we can't escape, the reason why we can't leave Egypt, because he kept getting lost. And he wasn't able, every time he turned and go to another route, he became lost again. People came to Musa and they told him, the reason why we're always getting lost is because there was a promise from Yusuf alayhi salam. Yusuf alayhi salam told his people. Now, just a backstory. Yusuf alayhi salam was the reason why Bani Israel came to Egypt in the first place. Yusuf alayhi salam, because of his position in leadership in Egypt, he was able to bring all of his family, Bani Israel, from Palestine, and they lived in Egypt. So when Israel today saying that, oh, we're just going back to our homeland, Palestine, they kind of have a point, right? Now, Yusuf alayhi salam, before he died, he told his people, remember, his people are the Jews. He told his people, if you leave Egypt, you take my body with you. He didn't want to be left in Egypt. There's a lot of things about what do you call it? Grave bandits and stuff like that. Like especially nowadays, where they go and dig out graves, especially with the mummies. It still happens today. Whether or not it's related to what Yusuf alayhi salam requested, but it makes sense in terms of if they dig these graves, and let's just say they dig the grave of Yusuf alayhi salam, who knows what they're going to do with that? The wisdom behind why Yusuf alayhi salam told his people to take his body with them, Allah knows best. So they told Musa alayhi salam this. In fact, it was narrated from our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that in relation to this story, he was invited, or he was hosted by an Arab. Our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was hosted by an Arab, a Bedouin, and our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam recognized that his way of hosting was very generous. So in return, the Prophet ﷺ asked or requested him that, come to me and I will host you one day, as a return of a favor. So when the Bedouin came, the Prophet ﷺ hosted the Bedouin. In this meeting, or in this time that they had together, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ asked this Bedouin, make any wish, make any dua you want. And you know what the Bedouin said? The Bedouin responded by saying, he wanted a she-camel, a camel. And he wanted goats so that his wife can milk the goats. Meaning, he wanted the luxuries of the dunya. Right? Like, in relation to us, if the Prophet Muhammad came to this Bedouin in 2024, it's as if this Bedouin is saying, give me a Ferrari, or give me a Maserati, or give me, one of the riches of this world. And I want, sustenance for my family. Like things that I can give to my money, for example. This is what the Bedouin is asking the Prophet Muhammad. Now, the Prophet Muhammad says he was upset with this request. He was upset, and he told his companions, are you unable to be like the old woman of Bani Israel? And the companions, they asked it, who is this woman that you're talking about? The Prophet Muhammad says that when Musa left Egypt, left Egypt, he kept getting lost. And he recognized the Prophet Muhammad narrated the story that we're talking about right now. When Musa kept getting lost, it was because that he had to go find the body of Yusuf. So Musa asked his people, who knows where the grave is? Who knows where the grave of Yusuf is? Everybody said, nobody knew except for one old woman. Just one. So they requested for the woman to go and talk to Musa. Musa asked to show where the grave site of Yusuf was. The woman said, I will not tell you until you grant me something, until you make dua for me. So Musa said, what is your request? The woman asked, this is what she asked. She said, that I should be with you in Jannah. For one information, from just one simple thing, her request was Jannah. Next to Musa alayhi salam. So Musa alayhi salam was like, what is this request? Like, Musa alayhi salam didn't like it. He's like, all you're giving me is information of a gravesite of Yusuf alayhi salam. And you're asking for the best? You're asking for Jannatul Firdaus? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then, He revealed to Musa, grant her what she wished for. Grant her. Tell her that I'm accepting her dua. So because of this, she told them to go to a pond, a place, a body of water, and she told them to empty the water, to empty the water. And when they saw the bottom of the water, she told them to dig, and they found the body of Yusuf alayhi salam. And they were finally able to escape Egypt after that. Now the moral of the story is that, first and foremost, it shows the character of a prophet, honoring a guest in a generous fashion. When you have a guest, in Islam, we're told to honor them. There's a hadith that says, whoever believes in Allah in the Day of Judgment, let them honor their guests, his guests. The second of which is returning the goodness with goodness. Ihsan kal baldal ihsan. If somebody does you a favor, you should return them that favor. And if you can't return them that favor, the least you can do is make dua for them. That's the least you can do. The third lesson from this hadith is that, the Bedouin, when he had the chance and the opportunity to ask anything he wanted, and this is in front of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, meaning it'll be accepted, he asked for this dunya. But he referred to the woman of Bani Israel. He says, why can't you be like this woman? And what does this woman do? She asked for the best. She asked the Prophet Musa ﷺ for the best and nothing in this dunya. There's a difference between these two. I urge everybody, tomorrow, when we have this opportunity, yes, we don't have the opportunity to sit in front of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and ask him, through him, and ask for an accepted dua. Allah tells us, on the day of Arafah, make dua to him directly. And when you make dua, ask for the best. Just like this woman from Bani Israel. For the sake of time, I want to jump into this one. There's a lot of information which I find to be very relevant, but I didn't expect it to take this long. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells Musa alayhi salam, Asri bi ibadi, to take my servants, and he's referring to Bani Israel as his first servants, to take him at night. And after the events of Yusuf alayhi salam and his grave, Musa alayhi salam continued, and they reach the Red Sea. And this is where it picks up in the story of, or the Surah of Taha, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاضْرِبْ لَهُمْ طَرِيقًا فِي الْبَحْرِ يَبَسًا. He commands, even before this ayah, Allah recognizes the same events in Surah Shu'ara. When Musa alayhi salam approaches the Red Sea, and the people that's with him, in fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاتَّبَعُوهُمْ مُشْرِقِينَ. The Fir'aun and his people, his army, فَاتَّبَعُوهُمْ, they pursued Musa alayhi salam. فَلَمَّا تَرَى جَمْعَانِ قَالَ أَصْحَابُ مُوسَى إِنَّا لَمُدْرِكُونَ. When the two groups of people, we're talking about Bani Israel and we're talking about Fir'aun and his army, when they saw each other, when they met each other, that's when the people of Bani Israel, this is what they said. They said, we're overtaken. We're done for. That's it. It's over with. We're going to die. We're going to be captured. Fir'aun is right there. In front of us is the Red Sea. It's over with. We can't go anywhere. And at this very moment, Musa alayhi salam, he shows us an example of having faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, to understand what Musa alayhi salam is going through, he's a human being. And with humans, when you see something, you're convinced of it. If I were to tell you that, my hat or my kufi is white, if I were to tell you that it's black, you wouldn't believe me because your eyes tell you something else, right? If you were to be convinced, if somebody tells you that there is a black car outside, just because it's dark, he can't see the color. If you were to go outside and you approach the car, and you heard that it was black, and you can't see the color because it's dark, you're convinced that it's black, even though it's a different color, because your ears tell you something. Correct? Musa alayhi salam, not only sees the sea himself, he sees it right in front of him, and he sees the army of Fir'aun right behind him. Does he not? And he hears his own people he knew, people that he grew up with, children, adults, elders. Everybody is complaining to Musa, "Inna la mudrakun." We're done. We're overtaken. That's it. We have no hope left. His own senses is telling him something. The reality of this dunya is telling him one thing, but his heart is telling him something else. And the very next ayah, this is what he says. He says, قَالَ كَلَّا إِنَّ مَعِيَ رَبِّي سَيَهْدِينَ. He says no. In fact, in English, there's no word to explain what kalla means. Kalla means definitely not. Certainly not. It is not possible. No way. That's what it means by saying kalla. If you were to tell me my hat is red, I'll say kalla. It's not possible. Kalla. It is impossible. Do you understand what's happening? Musa alayhi salam, wallahi, I sat down for hours and hours to try to understand what level of iman could Musa possibly have for him to ignore reality, to ignore his eyes, ignore his ears, ignore his surroundings, because he trusted Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he says, Kalla, no way, impossible. Inna Rabbi ma'i. Indeed, Allah is with me. Sayahdeen, and He's going to guide me. How can you possibly say that in this time? How can you possibly believe that something impossible will happen? What kind of level of iman does Musa alayhi salam have? What kind of level of faith did he have to be able to say kalla when his eyes is telling him something, when his ears is telling him something, and when his surrounding and his reality is saying something and he believes something else? That is something that I couldn't understand for hours and hours. I couldn't. It's you must love and trust Allah so much that you know that this reality it's not real. That you realize that when Allah promises, because when Allah says earlier in Surah Taha, Allah told him with His voice. He says to him, he says, قال بل ألقوا فإذا عفوا. He says, وَلَقَدْ أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَى مُوسَى أَنْ عفوا. He says, he says, فَأَوْجَسَ فِي نَفْسِي خِيفَةً مُوسَى. And he says, قُلْنَا لَا تَخَفْ إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ أَحْفَى. Astaghfirullah. He says, no, he doesn't say that. I lost the, okay, I got it. قال ربنا إننا نخاف أن يفرط علينا أو أن يطغى. And then Allah says, قلنا لا تخف إنني معكما أسمع وأرى. He says to Musa and his brother, he says, indeed, you don't have to worry. You don't have to be afraid. Innani, indeed, I am with you. Asma'u wa ara. I hear and I see everything. This is when Musa alayhi salam understood that Allah was with him and he sees everything and he hears everything. He sees what Musa alayhi salam sees. He hears what Musa alayhi salam hears from Bani Israel. Right? So he trusted Allah. Musa alayhi salam trusted Allah because of this ayah. So after that, after Musa alayhi salam trusted Allah, remember the hadith when a Muslim, to show true faith, he ties his camel first. He does what he can. Musa alayhi salam, he did what he can. So Allah says, فَاضْرِبْ لَهُمْ طَرِيقًا فِي الْبَحْرِ. Musa alayhi salam takes his stick and he hits the sea with it. The scholars mention, can a stick possibly split the sea? Can it do that? Does Allah need Musa alayhi salam to do what he did? Or can Allah just split the sea right then and there? The scholars mention that this is to show that we have to do our part first, no matter how little it is. Even though we don't think it can cause any type of benefit, we do it. This reminds me of a scholar of the past, in which students, they speak about the scholar and they say that I cannot remember the name of the scholar, but the scholar would show up every single week to give a lesson, to give a dars. No matter if it's 100 students or if it's just one student, the scholar will still teach. He'll still sit there and he'll still teach. Because he doesn't do it for fame. He doesn't do it to get recognized. He does it because even though it's just one person, that little effort that he gives or that he tries to teach, he leaves the rest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what we have to do in Islam. No matter what it is, we do what we can. Even if it's teaching a soccer team and getting kids together, or even if it's just teaching other kids coding or things of this dunya. If it gives benefits, no matter how little we think it is, we still do it. Musa alayhi salam, he didn't have to hit the bahr, the sea. You know that the stick won't be able to split the sea in the first place. But Allah still tells him, فَاضْرِبْ لَهُمْ طَرِيقًا فِي الْبَحْرِ. Hit the sea so that it can open the way and it can open a path. Did Musa alayhi salam question his Lord? Did he question? He says, Ya Allah, that's impossible. How can I do that? No, he trusted Allah. And he hit the sea and it split. Something impossible became possible because Musa alayhi salam had full 100% faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you do that, when you trust Allah completely, things that are impossible in this dunya, things that are impossible in this dunya will become possible for you. If you think it's impossible for you to study in Medina, trust Allah. He'll give you what you want, or he'll give you something better. If you think it's impossible to die as a shaheed in Medina today, if you trust Allah, He will give you that, or He'll give you something better. If you think that you have a stroke and your body is not functional, like I know some people, Allah cure them, their body, is unfunctional. They can't drive. They're not able to go to the masjid. But in their heart, they love the masjid. They cannot give it up. They can't. Allah finds other ways. Allah finds their children to bring them to the masjid. Allah finds other people in their life to bring them to the masjid. Allah will find ways for you. Even though you can't possibly or physically do it, Allah will find ways for you. MashaAllah, there's a family. Many people know this family. I'm just going to say it. The family of OE, Olympic Express. Now they're known as Smash. They sell burgers, MashaAllah. May Allah bless them in their business. Till today, their father, may Allah cure him. May Allah give him the best of this dunya and the akhirah. I see him every single. The majority of the prayers in the masjid, I see him in the masjid praying. And it's only because his sons, they make an effort. You know what his sons do? They leave their business in the middle of selling, in the middle of cooking, They leave their business and they go pick up their father. Yes, they go pray in the masjid. When your heart is attached to Allah, Allah will find ways for you. Even though you think it's impossible, Allah will find ways for you. You just have to trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the biggest lesson that we can take from Musa alayhi salam. That his love and trust for Allah helped him in this dunya, and Allah opened ways for him where things are impossible. And with that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. وجزاكم الله خير والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.